Welcome to InfoStream, your daily current. Unsure what to listen to? Turn to us for today's headlines. Stay informed. Israel strikes intensify in Gaza City. Negotiations continue alongside escalating violence. Russia's attacks escalate in Ukraine. Heavy bombardment causes widespread devastation and casualties. Ellabell workers detained. A complex investigation is underway. Nepal protests erupt over social media ban. Concerns about corruption fuel public unrest. Thailand-Cambodia conflict escalates. Border disputes heighten tensions between the nations. Norway's election sees center-right gains. Political complexities contribute to the outcome. France faces political paralysis. Uncertainty surrounds the prime ministerial situation. Turks and Caicos grapples with crime. Rising crime rates present significant challenges. Routh trial begins. The attempted Trump assassination case commences. Aaron Patterson sentenced for murder. A mother and her baby were victims of the crime. French doctor faces trial. Patient poisonings are the subject of the legal proceedings. Irish authorities foil drug smuggling. A major operation targeting drug trafficking was successful. Tom Phillips found after manhunt ends. A fugitive father and his children were located. Israeli strikes intensify in Gaza City amidst hostage negotiations and West Bank expansion concerns. Recent news coverage details a rapidly escalating situation in Gaza, characterized by intensified Israeli military strikes targeting Gaza City, while simultaneously highlighting concerns regarding potential Israeli expansion of sovereignty over the West Bank. The core narrative revolves around the urgent need for hostage negotiations, coupled with growing anxieties about Israel's future territorial ambitions. Multiple reports confirm a significant escalation in Israeli air attacks within Gaza City, specifically targeting what Israel claims are Hamas command and control centers. These strikes have resulted in numerous civilian casualties, further exacerbating the already dire humanitarian crisis within the territory. The Israeli government maintains that these actions are essential for dismantling Hamas's operational capabilities. Amidst this heightened military activity, diplomatic efforts to secure the release of hostages held by Hamas are ongoing. However, progress remains elusive, and the timeline for a potential deal remains uncertain. Simultaneously, Israel is considering a significant expansion of its control over the West Bank, a move that has drawn criticism from international allies and raised concerns about escalating tensions with Palestinians and the broader region. U.S. Ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, recently indicated that the Trump administration would not dictate Israel's decisions regarding West Bank annexation, signaling a potential shift in U.S. policy. Israeli Defense Minister Gideon Saar dismissed calls for a ceasefire, asserting Israel's commitment to achieving complete control over Gaza. The situation is further complicated by international pressure for a cessation of hostilities and increased humanitarian aid to Gaza. Despite these calls, Israel continues its military offensive, fueled by a determination to eliminate Hamas and secure the release of its hostages. The potential annexation of the West Bank adds another layer of complexity, raising the stakes and threatening to further destabilize the region. The ongoing conflict underscores the urgent need for a comprehensive and sustainable resolution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Russia's intensified attacks on Ukraine, culminating in the heaviest aerial bombardment since the war's inception, have triggered a significant escalation in Western response and widespread devastation. The primary focus of the attacks centered on Kyiv, particularly targeting the nation's main government building, a symbolic strike that underscored the ongoing conflict's intensity. The attack, involving over 800 drones and 13 missiles, resulted in 4 fatalities, including a mother and her baby, and numerous injuries. U.S. President Donald Trump has threatened tougher sanctions against Russia, despite past inaction, indicating a potential shift in strategy. Treasury Secretary Scott Bewley emphasized the need for stronger European backing to escalate economic pressure and trigger a collapse of the Russian economy. The situation is framed as a race between Ukraine's military resilience and Russia's economic capabilities. The assault on Kyiv's government building was the first direct hit on a Ukrainian government headquarters during the war, prompting heightened security measures and concerns about the symbolic value of the attack. Following the incident, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky condemned the strike as a deliberate crime aimed at prolonging the war. Beyond Kyiv, attacks extended to Zaporozhye, Kryvyi Rih, Odessa, Sumy, and Chernihiv, further demonstrating the breadth of Russia's offensive. A Ukrainian midfielder, Georgy Sudakov, reported severe damage to his apartment and his family's safety, highlighting the war's impact on civilian lives. The attacks have intensified the debate surrounding Western support for Ukraine, with calls for increased military and economic assistance. The situation remains fluid, with ongoing assessments of Ukraine's defensive capabilities and Russia's strategic objectives. The destruction of civilian infrastructure and the displacement of residents continue to be major humanitarian concerns. The conflict remains a critical geopolitical flashpoint, demanding continued international attention and diplomatic efforts to achieve a resolution. The use of shade drones, as reported by Sudakov, has become a prominent feature of the attacks, adding to the overall strategic complexity of the conflict. Ellabell workers detained. A complex investigation unfolds. A significant immigration operation culminated in the detention of over 450 workers at a Hyundai manufacturing plant in Ellabell, Georgia, sparking a multifaceted investigation involving numerous federal and state agencies. The operation, stemming from a months-long investigation, targeted individuals suspected of working and residing illegally in the United States, highlighting concerns about workforce exploitation and immigration law violations. The core of the operation centered around the Hyundai Metaplant, a 900-acre facility housing electric vehicle and battery manufacturing sites jointly operated by Hyundai and LG Energy Solution. The plant, intended to employ up to 8,500 people, experienced a halt in construction following the raid. The investigation revealed a complex situation involving workers from South Korea, including over 300 nationals, alongside individuals from other countries. South Korea's foreign ministry swiftly responded, arranging a chartered flight to facilitate the immediate return of its citizens. This proactive measure, unprecedented in its scope, underscored the gravity of the situation and the government's commitment to securing the release of its nationals. The operation involved a coordinated effort from agencies such as ICE, Homeland Security Investigations, the Georgia State Patrol, FBI, DEA, and ATF. The investigation's origins trace back to a judicial search warrant, prompting a broader sweep of the facility. Workers were issued orders while wearing protective gear, and the scene was secured by armed agents. The operation's intent was to gather evidence and establish criminal culpability. The situation has prompted significant diplomatic engagement, with South Korea's foreign minister offering direct involvement in resolving the matter. Furthermore, LG Energy Solution suspended business trips to the U.S. and prioritized the prompt release of detained individuals. The incident raises critical questions about labor practices, immigration enforcement, and the long-term impact on the Hyundai Metaplant's development. Nepal protests erupt over social media ban and corruption. Widespread protests erupted in Nepal following a government decision to ban numerous social media platforms, including Facebook, X, and YouTube, alongside growing discontent over pervasive corruption and economic failures. At least 19 people have died, with 17 fatalities confirmed in Kathmandu and 2 additional deaths reported in Edahari, stemming from clashes between demonstrators and security forces. The protests, largely spearheaded by Generation Z, centered around the government's authoritarian approach and the lack of progress addressing long-standing corruption issues. The government's move to block social media platforms, intended to combat fake news, hate speech, and online fraud, triggered widespread outrage. Demonstrators argued the ban was a tactic to silence dissent and focus primarily on the government's corruption. Many utilize platforms like TikTok, which remains operational, to amplify their message. Security forces responded with force, deploying water cannons, batons, and tear gas, leading to injuries and further escalating tensions. A curfew was implemented in Kathmandu and surrounding areas following attempts by protesters to breach the parliament building. During the unrest, Home Minister Ramesh Lekhak resigned on moral grounds. The United Nations Human Rights Office has called for a thorough investigation into the deaths and urged the government to reconsider its restrictive measures. Several allegations of excessive force by security personnel have surfaced. Despite the ban, some users are circumventing restrictions using VPNs, and 2 platforms have been reactivated after registration with the ministry. The situation remains volatile, with protests continuing and authorities attempting to maintain order. The government maintains that the ban is intended to align social media with Nepali law, but the underlying issues of corruption and governance remain central to the ongoing unrest. Thailand-Cambodia conflict, border disputes, and rising tensions. The ongoing conflict between Thailand and Cambodia stems from a complex web of territorial disputes, historical narratives, and political maneuvering. The core issue revolves around the contested border, particularly the Preah Vihear Temple, a site of significant religious and nationalistic importance for both countries. Following a period of heightened tensions culminating in open conflict in July, a fragile ceasefire has been established, though underlying animosity persists. The immediate impact of the conflict is evident in the displacement of thousands of Cambodian families, particularly those living near the border. The Thai military's response involved the deployment of razor wire and black screens, effectively creating a new border demarcation that disregards long-standing agreements. Cambodian villagers claim their homes and fields have been severed, while Thailand asserts its actions are necessary for security. The Pravahir temple has suffered significant damage from artillery exchanges, with over 140 blast sites recorded by Cambodian authorities. Both sides accuse the other of violating the ceasefire, with Thailand alleging Cambodian forces used cluster munitions and Cambodia claiming Thai soldiers are holding Cambodian soldiers as hostages. The conflict has had substantial economic repercussions, with trade routes disrupted and tourism impacted. The closure of the Siem Reap airport terminal highlights the broader economic strain. Investigations reveal a pattern of military reinforcement along the border by Cambodian forces in the months leading up to the conflict, fueled by political instability within Thailand. A key element of the dispute is the historical interpretation of the border, with both countries relying on different maps and legal rulings. The International Court of Justice's 1962 ruling recognizing Cambodian sovereignty over the temple remains contentious. Furthermore, the conflict has become intertwined with domestic political dynamics, with accusations of interference from the Shinawatra family in Thailand and the role of Cambodian Prime Minister Hun Sen. The leak of a conversation between Hun Sen and the then Thai Prime Minister further escalated tensions. Both nations are utilizing the dispute to garner international support, with Cambodia protesting the damage to Pravahir and Thailand highlighting Cambodian violations of the ceasefire. The situation underscores Cambodia's vulnerability as a smaller nation surrounded by larger neighbors, and the challenges of resolving long-standing territorial disputes. Norway's tight election center-right gains momentum amidst complex issues. Norway is set for a closely contested election, with the Labour-led government facing a strong challenge from the center-right, primarily driven by domestic economic concerns and shifts in foreign policy. The election's outcome hinges on several factors, including the popularity of Prime Minister Jonas Gahr Støre and the rising influence of the Progress Party under Sylvia Listhaug, alongside Erna Solberg's Conservative Party. Key issues dominating the campaign include the proposed 1% wealth tax, a significant motivator for wealthy Norwegians to relocate to countries like Switzerland, and a wide-ranging review of taxation proposed by Labour. The center-right strategy involves abolishing the wealth tax and reducing other taxes, particularly on working capital. Labour, led by former NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg, is wary of creating a tax system that disproportionately benefits the wealthy. Opinion polls currently favor Labour, largely due to the Stoltenberg effect, but a combined center-right victory remains a significant possibility. Foreign policy has been significantly impacted by Norway's sovereign wealth fund, the world's largest, which recently divested from nearly half of its Israeli investments due to alleged human rights violations, a move heavily influenced by the Gaza conflict. This decision, overseen by Nicolai Tangen, represents the fund's worst-ever crisis. Despite Norway's membership in NATO and access to the EU's single market through the European Economic Area, the prospect of full EU membership remains a contentious issue, with a substantial no vote anticipated. While the center-right advocates for pursuing EU membership based on a referendum, Labour maintains a pro-EU stance, but prioritizes maintaining its current relationship. The election's outcome is uncertain, with significant implications for Norway's economic and foreign policy direction. France faces prolonged political paralysis amidst prime ministerial uncertainty. France is on the brink of yet another prime ministerial change following a confidence vote initiated by François Bayrou, a move largely expected to fail and further deepen the country's political deadlock. The situation, characterized by a year of parliamentary paralysis and escalating divisions, stems from President Emmanuel Macron's decision to call a snap parliamentary election in June 2024, which instead fueled extremist support. Bayrou's gamble, intended as a shock to force agreement on an austerity budget aimed at tackling France's soaring national debt, currently at 114% of its economic output, is considered a failure, with concerns that young people will bear the burden of debt repayment. The political landscape is shifting dramatically towards the right, particularly the National Rally, led by Jordan Bardella, who is experiencing significant public support. Bardella's popularity is fueled by frustration over rising taxes, perceived mismanagement of public funds, and concerns about immigration, with supporters expressing a desire for a fundamental overhaul of French policy. Following the confidence vote, Bardella is positioning himself as a potential future prime minister, advocating for a referendum on immigration as a key policy initiative. The underlying cause of the crisis is Macron's weakened position, resulting from a parliamentary majority that struggles to secure support. While Macron is exploring options to form a functioning minority government, The extreme polarization of the electorate suggests a return to negotiations with right-wing parties is likely. Public opinion polls indicate a sharp decline in Macron's popularity, contributing to the instability. The situation reflects a broader sense of disillusionment with the established political order, with many French citizens expressing a preference for more radical solutions. The country remains trapped in a cycle of political maneuvering, with no immediate prospect of a stable and effective government. The focus is now firmly on Bardella and the National Rally, as they seek to capitalize on the prevailing discontent. Turks and Caicos grapples with rising crime and complex challenges. The Turks and Caicos Islands are facing a severe surge in violent crime, marked by a record number of homicides and a heightened sense of fear among residents. The archipelago, renowned for its beaches and luxury tourism, is experiencing a crisis fueled by a combination of factors including Haitian migration, gang activity, and complex citizenship laws. As of August 2024, the territory had recorded 24 killings, with 17 hours ago reporting of escalating crime. A significant influx of Haitian migrants, fleeing violence and instability in Haiti, has exacerbated the situation. Many of these migrants, often lacking legal status due to the island's complicated citizenship process, find themselves vulnerable to recruitment by local gangs. The island's premier Washington Mystic has publicly blamed Haitian migrants for the crime surge, prompting a backlash from the Haitian Heritage Association, who accused the public of hateful narratives. The crisis is deeply intertwined with local gang activity, which predominantly focuses on territorial control, local drug dealing, extortion, and disrupting elections. While a small number of Caribbean gangs engage in international drug trafficking, the vast majority operate within the islands. The availability of firearms stemming from South American drug production and trafficking is a critical contributing factor. Recent efforts to combat crime include temporary curfews, stricter controls on alcohol sales, increased police search powers, and the demolition of over 220 informal settlements. Despite these measures, the challenges remain substantial. Tourism, the island's primary economic driver, generates approximately $250 million in revenue during the first half of the 2024-2025 financial year, but the crime situation threatens this industry. Local reporter Wilkie Arthur emphasizes the need to empower young people, particularly those of Haitian origin, who often find themselves trapped in a cycle of poverty and gang involvement. The UN reports indicate that the Caribbean region is experiencing an intensification of organized crime and lethal violence, with many islands struggling to manage the complex interplay of factors contributing to this escalating crisis. The situation highlights the urgent need for comprehensive solutions addressing migration, gang violence, and socioeconomic disparities within the Turks and Caicos Islands. Ryan Routh trial begins. Accused of attempted Trump assassination, Ryan Routh, a 59-year-old North Carolina native, is set to stand trial in Fort Pierce, Florida, on charges related to an alleged assassination attempt on Donald Trump in September 2024. Routh, who has a prior criminal history and a history of supporting Ukraine, intends to represent himself, a strategy that has drawn scrutiny and raised concerns about the proceedings. The trial, overseen by Judge Ellabell Cannon, who also presided over Trump's classified documents case, is expected to feature evidence including eyewitness testimony, statements from individuals who sold Routh the rifle, and a letter allegedly penned by Routh confessing to the attempted attack. Routh was apprehended after being spotted near the fifth hole of a West Palm Beach golf course where Trump was playing. Investigators discovered a sniper's nest constructed through the fence line, along with an SKS semi-automatic rifle loaded with 11 bullets. The rifle was illegally obtained by Routh from two North Carolina residents, Tina Cooper and Ronnie Oxendine, who had sold it to him shortly before his trip to Florida. During the trial, Routh plans to call a firearms expert to examine the rifle's position and functionality. However, Judge Cannon has denied requests for testimony from psychological experts who assessed Routh's mental state, citing the late stage of the proceedings and Routh's own assertions against a defense based on mental health. Routh's strategy involves highlighting his peaceful character and advocating for the inclusion of his Dear World letter, which details his intentions and expresses a desire for global unity. He has repeatedly expressed disdain for Trump, referring to him as a racist pig. The case has drawn attention due to Routh's decision to self-represent, a tactic that raises concerns about procedural complexities and potential disruptions to the trial. Standby counsel, previously assigned to Routh's case, are available to advise him. Judge Cannon retains the authority to remove Routh's right to self-representation if the proceedings are deemed to be significantly hampered. The trial's outcome hinges on the presentation of evidence and the legal arguments made by both the prosecution and the defendant, with the potential for a life sentence if convicted. Aaron Patterson sentenced to 3 life sentences for mushroom murder. Aaron Patterson, the woman convicted of fatally poisoning 3 family members with death cap mushrooms, has been sentenced to 3 life sentences, with a non-parole period of 33 years. The sentencing concluded a high-profile trial that captivated Australia and garnered international attention. The case stemmed from a lunch Patterson hosted on July 31, 2023, at her home in Leongatha, Victoria, where she intentionally laced a meal with deadly mushrooms, resulting in the deaths of her estranged husband's parents, Don and Gail Patterson, and his aunt and uncle, Heather and Ian Wilkinson. The trial revealed Patterson's growing resentment towards the Pattersons, fueled by their involvement in her marital difficulties. Evidence presented included numerous Facebook messages expressing her anger and frustration, suggesting a premeditated plan. Despite her claims of accidental contamination, the jury found her guilty based on the overwhelming evidence, including the discovery of the mushrooms and her inconsistent statements to police. During the sentencing, Justice Christopher Beale acknowledged the extensive media coverage and public interest in the case. He emphasized the premeditation involved and Patterson's elaborate cover-up. The non-parole period reflects the severity of the crime and the lasting impact on the victims' families. Ian Wilkinson, the sole survivor, expressed gratitude for the investigative efforts and extended an offer of forgiveness to Patterson. The case significantly impacted the small town of Morwell, where the trial took place, bringing national attention to the region. The sentencing concludes a lengthy legal process, solidifying Patterson's conviction and securing her permanent imprisonment. The case remains a notable example of a crime driven by personal animosity and the devastating consequences of intentional poisoning. French doctor faces trial over patient poisonings. The trial of Frédéric Piétier, a French anesthetist, is underway in Bessan on eastern France concerning allegations of poisoning 30 patients, resulting in 12 deaths between 2008 and 2017. Piétier, 53, has been under judicial supervision since his initial investigation 8 years prior, maintaining his innocence. Over 150 civil parties representing the victims are participating in the proceedings, which are expected to last more than 3 months. The accusations stem from a series of serious adverse events, beginning in January 2017 when Sandra Simard, a 36-year-old patient, suffered cardiac arrest following surgery and a subsequent injection by Piétier, leading to a prolonged coma. Elevated potassium levels in her intravenous drugs triggered an investigation. Shortly after, a 70-year-old man experienced a similar event, with Piétier claiming tampered paracetamol bags. Investigations revealed a pattern of suspicious deaths dating back to 2008. Damien Allen died in 2008 after a routine kidney operation at the St. Vincent Clinic, with tests indicating a potentially lethal dose of lidocaine. Further investigation uncovered 9 additional cases following Piétier's departure in March 2017, involving patients ranging in age from 4 to 89. Prosecutors allege Piétier deliberately tampered with intravenous medicines to induce cardiac arrests as a form of revenge against colleagues. They consider him the common denominator in all the cases. The investigation examined serious adverse events at the Franchicondi Polyclinic and the St. Vincent Clinic, revealing instances where multiple patients required resuscitation during minor operations. Piétier's family, including his daughter Amandine, expressed the profound impact of the accusations. The trial's outcome carries significant implications, with a guilty verdict potentially leading to a life sentence. The case has involved a complex investigation into multiple adverse events over a 9-year period, highlighting concerns about patient safety within the healthcare system. The trial will conclude in December, and Piétier will remain under judicial supervision. Irish authorities foil drug smuggling operation. A significant drug smuggling operation involving 2 vessels, the MV Matthew and the Castlemore, was successfully thwarted by Irish authorities, resulting in the seizure of over 2.2 tons of cocaine, with an estimated value of over 157 million als 136 million. The operation highlighted vulnerabilities in Ireland's defenses and the escalating challenges posed by transatlantic drug trafficking. Initial intelligence, including a text message from Dubai referencing luck, revealed the involvement of organized crime groups, notably the Kinahan gang, who purchased the MV Matthew for approximately 10 million. 3 individuals, Ukrainian Vitaly Lapa, Stockton-on-Tees resident Jamie Harburn, and Scottish resident Stephen Boyd, were identified as key players. The operation unfolded with the Castlemore, captained by Sohail Jelvi, attempting to rendezvous with the MV Matthew in the Irish Sea. However, the vessel's attempts were repeatedly disrupted by adverse weather conditions and mechanical issues. The Irish Navy, tracking the vessels, intervened when the Castlemore ran aground, necessitating a Coast Guard rescue. Simultaneously, Jelvid and Harburn attempted to evade capture, leading to a dramatic confrontation involving warning shots fired by the Irish Navy, the first since the 1980s. Stephen Boyd, the Scottish operative, remained at large, communicating with his Dubai-based boss, Captain Noah, who repeatedly urged calm while the Irish military prepared to intercept. The Irish Army Ranger Wing, utilizing a repurposed air ambulance helicopter, boarded the MV Matthew, capturing the crew and recovering over $50,000 in cash. The operation underscored Ireland's vulnerability due to its extensive coastline and limited defense resources, with only one operational Navy ship and a shortage of available helicopters. Despite the cartel's attempts to utilize sophisticated tactics, including communication with Dubai and reliance on a backup skipper, the coordinated response of the Irish military proved decisive. The seizure represents a major victory for law enforcement and demonstrates ongoing efforts to combat the growing threat of drug trafficking across the Atlantic. Tom Phillips' fugitive dad and children found after 4-year manhunt ends in death. Tom Phillips, a man who disappeared in late 2021 with his 3 children, was fatally shot by police following a 4-year manhunt. The case, one of New Zealand's most enduring mysteries, concluded when officers responded to a reported robbery in Puopio, a small town in northern New Zealand. Phillips and one of his children were observed on a quad bike, leading to a police chase and the deployment of road spikes. The bike struck the spikes, causing the vehicle to go off-road, where Phillips was engaged and killed. A police officer sustained a serious head wound during the encounter. Phillips' 3 children, aged 5, 7, and 8 at the time of their disappearance, were subsequently found unharmed at a remote campsite. Crucially, one of the children provided crucial information that aided in locating the other 2. Phillips had been evading capture since failing to appear in court in 2022, following a custody dispute with his mother. He was known as a bushman with survival skills and had been living in Maricopa, a rural town surrounded by a harsh landscape including dense bush, a coastline, and a network of caves. Over the years, there were numerous sightings of Phillips and his children at break-ins at hardware and grocery stores. In October 2023, teenagers spotted them trekking through the bush and filmed the counter, where Phillips and the children were wearing camouflaged clothing and carrying packs. The children had briefly spoken to one of them, asking if anyone knew they were there, with the child responding, "Only you." Before continuing, a warrant was issued for Phillips' arrest in connection with a suspected bank robbery in TQD in 2023, where he had an accomplice. Locals in Maricopa, a tight-knit community of under 100 people, had questioned whether Phillips received assistance, though there was no direct evidence. His sister Rossi had previously expressed a desire for him to return. The children's mother, known only as Kat, expressed relief at the end of the ordeal. The case involved a significant police operation and cost New Zealand authorities hundreds of thousands of dollars. The final confrontation occurred after a protracted period of evasion and multiple sightings, highlighting the challenges posed by Phillips' survival skills and the difficult terrain in which he had been hiding. Trump's tariffs undermine manufacturing revival hopes. Recent news indicates that President Trump's tariffs are failing to deliver on promised economic revitalization for American manufacturing. Despite initial optimism, the implementation of tariffs on imported goods, particularly from countries like India, Portugal, and Liechtenstein, is negatively impacting businesses and slowing growth. Several companies are experiencing increased costs and reduced investment opportunities. The Teixeira family, operating Accurate Services Inc., in Fall River, Massachusetts, exemplifies this struggle. They have declined offers to expand their sewing services due to hiring difficulties exacerbated by immigration restrictions and concerns about sustained demand. Frank Teixeira believes tariffs are a flawed policy, predicting they will ultimately harm the U.S. economy. Similarly, Matuk, a high-end bedding manufacturer, has incurred over $100,000 monthly in additional costs due to tariffs on materials like cotton fabric, forcing cuts in investments and marketing spending. George Matuk expresses frustration, stating that the benefits of Made in America status are negated by increased costs and a likely decline in sales. Vance & Leathers, a motorcycle jacket business founded in 1974, provides another case study. Originally employing over 160 people, the company now operates with approximately 50 workers, a significant reduction linked to increased costs driven by tariffs. Mike van der Sleezen, the owner, criticizes the tariffs as unfair and disruptive, noting a 15% cost increase and a lack of overtime in the textile sector after 2 decades. Despite holding steady demand for its products, Vance & Leathers faces ongoing uncertainty. Studies show that limited tariffs implemented during Trump's first term resulted in minimal job gains, while negatively impacting other firms reliant on imported parts. The current tariffs are proving more disruptive, with no clear path to a successful manufacturing revival. The situation is described as demoralizing by George Matuk, highlighting the deliberate, negative impact of government policy. The overall trend suggests that the promised economic benefits of the tariffs are not materializing, and the situation remains precarious for many U.S. manufacturers. UK considers visa suspensions tied to migrant returns. The UK government is contemplating suspending visas for nations failing to cooperate on returning migrants, according to new Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood. This strategy emerged during a meeting of the Five Eyes Intelligence Sharing Alliance, involving representatives from the US, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and key ministers. The meeting's primary focus was addressing the escalating issue of small boat crossings to the UK, a problem exacerbated by Saturday's record arrival of 1,097 individuals, bringing the year's total to over 30,000, a 37% increase compared to last year. Mahmood emphasized border security as her top priority, stating the government's intention to play ball with nations that facilitate the return of individuals lacking legitimate UK residency. She indicated a willingness to implement coordinated action with the Five Eyes group, potentially including visa suspensions for countries unwilling to comply. The strategy aims to pressure nations like India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, and Nepal, where demand for UK visas remains high and returns of failed asylum seekers are low, to alter their approach. Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp criticized the government's stance, demanding tougher action and suggesting cuts to aid programs provided to countries failing to return UK citizens. The situation is further complicated by the high demand for UK visas in countries like India, which historically lobbies for increased access. The government's approach aligns with previous statements by Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, who has previously explored linking visa access to cooperation on migrant returns. The meeting underscored the government's determination to utilize all available levers to combat illegal migration and return individuals without the right to reside in the UK. The potential for visa suspensions represents a significant escalation in the government's strategy to manage the ongoing crisis at the UK's borders.